Okay, I'm going to dive right into this. We do have a bit of a time crunch. I guess Cheshire has a video premiere that's going to be out in about 90 minutes. I will put the link in the live chat before the end of this stream, but I kind of want to keep this down to about an hour anyways, if possible, maybe even less, who knows. But you know me, when I say about an hour, that means about 90 minutes. When I say about a half hour, that means about an hour. Just tack on an additional 30 minutes. But I am going to try to push through this. So without ado, I have no idea who this guy is. Everybody's been asking, who the hell's Connor Murphy? I don't know. I tried looking into him. He's got like 2.5 million subs. Never heard of the dude. Don't know what his shtick is. I'm guessing maybe by looking at some of his videos, he might be a bodybuilder of some kind or something along those lines, a fighter, MMA. I don't know, but it really is irrelevant. Somebody had sent me this clip. I watched it, said, yeah, I'll do a review on it. It's not a very long clip. It's only about 18 minutes, which I prefer. If you're going to send me a clip, shorter is better. 10 minutes, 15, 20 is perfect. 30 is okay. Hours kind of pushing it. 2 hours not going to happen. I just don't. There's no reason to do a 10-hour review. Find the best parts, and I'll try to do a review out of that. So yeah, this will be about an 8-hour-long video in Treat Feline. So prepare. Hope you brought snacks. Got a little piss bottle behind you or something like that. If you don't want to go, up to use a restroom, just come prepared. But long story short here. I'm having enunciation problems today. It's been a very long morning already. Long story short, this video was sent to me. It is a guy named Connor Murphy, who I guess is a well-known YouTuber that nobody seems to know, but whatever. Calls into the Atheist experience, and he has a conversation with Matt Dillahunty. Just to give you a brief, too long didn't read. Both of them just I don't understand. Both of them seem to be making huge mistakes in conceptualizations of things. But I thought we'd just kind of point out his issues, Connor Murphy's issues, and then Matt Dillahunty's inside. So here we go. Let's do this. I'm gonna drink my coffee so I can get a little more awake this morning.
All right, guys. So this might be the funnest video I've ever done.
Make sure you guys can hear this clearly and it's not too loud or too quiet.
Done. I just got done with it. It was so freaking funny. I called the Atheist Experience, which is a very famous atheist podcast, and they do it live on YouTube. And so I called in, and of course, I argued in the favor that there is a God.
Now, I guess he actually is a theist, from what I understand, because he's just like, okay, of course I argued. And that's what the Atheist Experience wants, right? They want theists to call in because they want to sit there and say, we don't believe you, and then get mad and hang up on them. That's the entertainment value of the Atheist Experience. It's not there to educate you on atheism, I assure you. I'm going to go on a limb here and just say straight out, if you want to learn about atheism, Atheist Experience is no longer the place to do it. Now, maybe 10 years ago, yeah, I actually watched the Atheist Experience, but that was back with Tracy Harris, and actually when they were trying to have actual dialogues. Now it's not the Atheist Experience. It's at best the Agnostic Experience or the Matt Dillahunty hang-up show or stroke Matt Dillahunty's ego show. One or the other.
They got so offended, they would not even listen to my definition of God.
Well, okay, right off the bat, I just like, the first guy I heard him say was like, they got offended. I don't think they give a crap. I don't know what they get offended by. They've heard it all. They've been on the show. Look, the show's been on for like, what, 15 years or something like that. It started as a cable access show. I'm sure Matt has heard it all. I don't know what would be so offensive to him, except for my arguments that he will never touch because he can't. But other than that, I don't think any theist arguments that are going to be given on the Atheist Experience are going to offend him too much, right?
Because I was radically against their beliefs. That's all atheism is a belief system, right? They can say it's a non-belief system, but that's still a belief system.
Okay, well, okay. And this is when I was listening to this. I only listened to this one time, and I was actually on the bus when I was doing it. I listened to when I was going to my dental appointment the other day. So, I think this is kind of a I want to say a semantic argument, and the reason being is if you know about set theory. A system is anything with axioms in it, anything with elements in it, anything even one it could be considered a system, right? So if you have one element in an axiomatic system, you can still call it a system. However, usually when we say a system, we mean two or more things. Like a system of linear equations would be two or more linear equations, right? So when we say a system of something, we generally, I think, understood as more than one axiom, more than one rule, more than one equation. There's something more than one. Now, Is it improper to say a system with only one? No. I've read, math things before that, a system is one or more things. And again, this gets down to semantics. Is atheism a system? I don't use it that way because I don't think the cursory, meaning discussion-wise, I don't think it gives any value to call it a system. Atheism is a position with respect to one single proposition, the proposition of God existing. Now, whether you selectively to say, look, we're talking about the monotheistic Judeo-Christian God, or we're talking about all gods in general, it's still a proposition with respect to some kind of God existing, right? Now, of course, the atheist experience have long since changed that. They've made it into a psychological state. This is weird, but now atheism, under their usages, which we'll get into here, is based upon the psychological state of the individual and no longer about the ontological position of God existing, which I think is strange, but that's how they do it. So,
right? And so watch this till the end, because I explain at the end how what they were saying is a giant contradiction, and it will be very clear to you. So just watch this entire video and watch these guys get debunked, because it is hilarious. This is one of the atheist leaders. He says he's not a leader. Of course he's a leader.
Okay, so I hate that word debunked because it's just a throwaway word, right? What does it mean to be debunked? I think arguments can be debunked if they assert something to be the case and you show it's a falsity. If I show a contradiction, I've debunked your argument. If I show your argument's just bad, that's not necessarily debunking. I can just say, look, I don't think it's a great argument, but it's logically valid. You got some issues here. But if I show a contradiction, then it's actually debunked. That's how I would use the phrase, right? So if you want to use it that way to debunk atheism, it's just show a God exists, right? If you want to debunk theism, show a God doesn't exist. But that makes it very difficult the way the ACA uses the term. How do you debunk atheism? That would mean that you're saying that somebody doesn't have the psychological state of non-belief? Well, of course they do, right? I mean, we understand that people have that, right? And by the way, thank you for the compliment or not on my hair. All I know is that people have been telling me I look 10 years younger, and I'm happy with that. So I'm cool with it. I've been playing my guitar a little bit, so rock on, baby. But yeah, as you guys know, please compliment or say how bad you think the looks of the host are with these things on my channel. We love it. Cheshire loves it. We're not like any other show out there where we go, please don't compliment on the looks of the host or what they're wearing. No, we would like you to do it, good, bad, or indifferent. It's okay with us. But so the whole thing, I don't understand the whole debunking thing, but whatever. But yeah, whatever. Oh, and by the way, the atheist leader, yeah, whatever, against semantics. Do I consider Matt Dillahunty an atheist leader? In some respects. I mean, he is somebody that people take his word by fiat. They don't look into whether whatever he says is correct or not, which is more cult-like activity. But would I say he's a leader in atheism? Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't think that's pejorative.
What? Just because you're not like a formal, like you're indoctrinated as Pope, that doesn't not make you a leader. Like what? Leader just means that people follow you. People listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah, I don't think that's really that big a pejorative, right? Now, the reason why Matt Dillahunty doesn't like the term, like people used to call him the atheist pope or something, right? I'm called the agnostic pope. The reason being is he doesn't want atheism to be related to religiosity, right? And religious terminology. But unfortunately, it has been. The ACA, to me, is no different than religion. They have lay clergy. They have things by fiat. They have proclamations. They tell people things that are untrue because of political and demographics and for, if they get money out of, things, people donate money. So I think it's a lot similar to religiosity than people want to realize. And by the way, if you want to, throw a dime this way for a super chat or subscribe to the channel, Patreon, that's fine too. I'm not shy about that, but I will never lie to you guys for a dime. I will always tell you guys what I think is the case. If I'm wrong, I will correct it. And I'll also show you evidence of what I say as much as possible. So very much different. Don't believe me by fiat. Go check what I have to say out. Matt Dillahunty and the ACA is completely opposite. They'll tell you something and people just parrot it like it's true, like it's no tomorrow.
That you have more authority.
And thank you, second best Bob. Thank you. He says I'm rocking the hair. Well, you know what? When I finally learn the rest of one completely on guitar, Metallica, we'll see. We'll see how the look blends in with it.
Community. He has more authority.
I gotta get a Black Sabbath shirt too.
Atheist community. Of course he's a leader. What? So listen to this. It's just filled with contradictions because as you guys, I hope you know by now, God is real. God is you. God is existence itself. You're experiencing God right now.
That sounds like pantheism, and no, I don't recognize that or realize that. The idea that all is one and one is all, that God is existence is contemporaneously with the universe, like they're the same thing, is a form of pandeism or pantheism. There's also panpsychism. It's also very similar to Spinoza's God, or the God of the philosophers, which I'm fine with, right? But that's not a religiosity thing. That's not a theist position, right? The Spinoza's God doesn't actually believe there's a God that exists as intentionality, that ever had a thought, right? It's more of the beauty and the elegance of nature and mathematics, and I'm fine with that. I'm all for Spinoza's God in that capacity, but that doesn't make me a theist, right? So Spinoza's God does not fall under theism. I hope people recognize that. Yeah. Yes, Wolfgang, Black Sabbath. Oh yes, Ozzy and Dio forever, man. Damn right. Jared says, "Don't forget that people look." Oh, did I just dox you, Jared? I'm so sorry. Ha ha ha. Jared don't forget that people look at Dillahunty as a religious figure of atheism because of his history in the seminary. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, dude. I see Matt carrying over a lot of his religiosity from when he was evangelical, studying to be a priest or minister or whatever. He has a lot of the same mindsets. He's never moved past that. He's never developed a coherent critical thinking, in my opinion, that he could have. I mean, and it's weird because years ago he never was this extreme. I mean, he never really shut down communications as much as he does now and just says things without evidence. I mean, I've never seen him produce a shred of evidence for anything he says. Now, I could be wrong. I don't watch the show that much. I only really watch clips, and I haven't watched it in many years. But from my experience, and if you guys can tell me I'm wrong, I never heard him quote a single paper. I've never heard him quote any expert. Maybe he'll reference flu or something. But I don't even know if he's ever read The Presumption of Atheism or understand why that paper's so bad, right? So, Sex Addict, you forgot that Dio was in Black Sabbath? Block him. Just block him now. Really? How can you forget Dio was in Black Sabbath, man? Now, granted, I'm old school. Ozzy is God. But if that wants to be a theist, that's fine. But yeah, Dio is amazing. I mean, how could you not love Holy Diver? But when he's saying for Black Sabbath, like Heaven and Hell, oh, come on. That's just, yeah, amazing. Also, Glenn Hughes also sang for Black Sabbath. And Jolene Turner, I believe. Didn't I, Jolene? Yeah, Jolene Turner did too from Rainbow.
The divine is no different from the natural world. So,
by the way, I do a lot of tangents when I do these reviews and coffee. Hope you guys don't mind. If you do, whatever.
I hope you enjoy this video. Watch till the end. I love you guys. And yeah, let's get into it.
I'm a little confused because Connor seems to be suggesting he can debunk atheism, then atheism doesn't make a positive statement, so there's no way to debunk it.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I guess you could debunk it if you could show that there's nobody that has a non-belief of God, according to Matt's usages. Was again silly. I mean, debunk. I mean, here's the thing: even if you use Matt's terminology, if you can show there's a God, then you can show that the non-belief of God is not justified any longer, right? I cannot, as an agnostic, be justified to have no position either way if it has been demonstrated that God exists. It would be irrational, I think, at that point, right? I'd be like, look, I'm talking to God. God's here. God's revealed himself to mankind. The world's been translated. It's been, now celestialized and all this other stuff that, second coming and rapture stuff. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, I know God exists, but I still don't believe it. Right. That would be non-vertical. That would be something incompatible with what actually is happening, assuming, let's have some principle of charity, assuming that it actually is God that exists, and it would be irrational, or at least not rational, to hold non-position, right, and non-belief. So you could debunk atheism no matter what, if there's a God. I mean, so I don't understand what Matt's trying to prove here. If there is a God, and God does exist, and it is demonstrated, belief God does not exist, as well as trying to justify non-belief, are both falls under that as being the case where you couldn't be justified to do it, right? I mean, it's just odd that he's making such a big deal about that. Jen says, I hear that a lot. People with religious backgrounds tend to keep some of their dogmas after leaving. Yes, they do. Very much so. Yeah. Can I turn on the CC on this video? Yes, I can. Absolutely. Let's see here. Intellectual iconoclasm, quote, oh, my absent God, you're right. It all stacks on there being no God. I must ensure everyone believes my views on there being no God. Dillahunty after conversion to new dogma system. Right? But I mean, filling me in here. If somebody demonstrates with a God, wouldn't atheism in any usage, as far as like positive or negative, would be unjustified to have that position? I think, and you want to call that debunked? Okay, whatever.
It says that atheism is no more than a religion based on blind assumptions. Subjective reality is evidence for God. Wow. Hey, Connor. Well, okay. Let's get started.
All right. Awesome, man. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to be here too. I love you guys.
So, where would you like me to begin?
At the beginning.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, first of all, I guess.
What do you say? Well, I tell you what. Why don't you define atheism?
Okay, cool. And I very well might be wrong because, you know, it is.
How are you wrong about a definition? Pick something and go with it, man. People ask, hey, define God. I have a very stipulative definition I use for God, just for argumentative purposes, right? And discussions. Segment Fault uses the same one. He actually has a pin to his Twitter because he likes it. I made it up. It is something completely, I mean, I pull, here you go. I mean, it's just for, discussionary purposes, so. But I mean, you can't be incorrect in the definition. I can say, look, I want to define a word like this. Okay, look, the word, pick a word. I'll say, trash. I'm looking at scheduled trash. Trash. I define trash to be things of value. Okay, that's not typically how the word is used, but if you want to use it, to have an argument, let's see where it goes, right? So I don't think there's right or wrong definitions, right? Because they are descriptive of usages, but you can stipulate if they say, I want the definition of this to be this, right? For practicality, if we're going to have a discussion on it. It doesn't have to be like how everybody else uses it. I can define words any way I want.
Is a path that I was only down for a very short period of time. But I would define atheism as simply not believing in God, right? The belief, the assumption that there is no God.
So see how that's see how he kind of waffled there. He's like, I would define atheism as, somebody who doesn't believe in God, the belief or the assumption there's no God, right? Well, obviously Matt wouldn't accept the second part. He accepts the first part, but I don't know why it'd be an assumption. I don't think people go around assuming there's no God for the most part. I think that what happens is they reach that as a conclusion rather than an assumption, right? Assumption is something you take axiomatically, right? You take it because, for example, I have to assume certain things. Like I have to assume everybody in my live chat are not bots. I have to assume they're external minds. I have to assume, reality is external to my own mind. It's not illusionary. These are things that I have to assume all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. Presuppositions are ubiquitous. We have thousands and thousands of things that we assume and believe and, just by, presuppositions all the time. So I don't know many atheists are going around going, I just assume there's no God. I think the ones that say there's no God, they have reasons for that. They say, look, I've heard all the arguments for theism. I think this is BS. This argument's bad. I heard the arguments for atheism, that, divine hiddenness and logical and evidential problem of evil and all these other things. I say, you know what? They seem to be indicating that the chances of God existing are so low that it doesn't warrant me even lacking a belief. It doesn't even warrant me suspending judgment. The odds are so low that I have a justification to believe there are no gods, right? Like I keep telling people, it's logically possible that flying pigs could fly out of my ass 5 minutes from now. But would I be justified to withhold denial of that and say I suspend judgment on that proposition? No, of course not. I mean, the odds are so low that I'm like, no, I hold the belief that pigs are not going to fly out of my ass 5 minutes from now, even though it is logically possible. No, we're not talking about nomological laws, right? Don't confuse the two. People think that, if it's biologically impossible, it must be logically impossible. Not the same thing. Something can be biologically impossible, but still logically possible, right? I mean, I can't be like dead and alive at the same time. I can't be breathing and not breathing at the same time. Those are logical contradictions. But as far as biology, that's completely different, right? I cannot go, an hour without oxygen and survive. That's just not biologically possible, but there's no logical contradiction to be had with that. Now you know why these things take an hour for me to review. I'm sorry. Not really.
Cool. We're at now. Here's the thing. Let me change that
to
not collecting stamps. Would you ever call in to a show and say that you can debunk non-stamp collecting?
Okay, back to the whole non-stamp collecting BS. It's such a worn out useless trope. I mean, it is nonsensical to begin with. Nobody's arguing whether people exist that collect stamps or not. These are existential questions. These are questions about ontology, whether God exists or not. And to try to change it as, oh, well, it's like non-stamp collection. That is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard from atheism in my life when they try to run that out there. Because we're not asking if stamp collectors exist now. We're not asking if people do something or not. We're asking about the existence of something. So can you debunk if non-stamp collectors exist? Yeah, show a stamp collector. Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's just, and it makes it so flippant. Like, well, why would you call a show to do this? You have a show set up for this kind of stuff. That's why people call it. And I find it useless in these conversations. Like I said, I think the atheist experience is completely useless to call up. If you want to have an honest dialogue, call up Cheshire and I, 11 a.m. on Mondays when we do Judgment Call. Now, however, we missed the last 2 weeks because we have things planned. I also am going out of town next month. So, you know, it's a little bit off and on right now, but it's only because of scheduling. That's the only reason why. Cheshire and I love doing Judgment Call, trust me.
Non-stamp collecting. That I could debunk that you cannot stamp collect.
If you debunk, let's call someone who doesn't collect stamps a no-stampist.
Right.
Would you call into their show and say that you can debunk no-stampism?
Yeah, you just have to show they collect stamps, right? I mean, hello. Again, work with me here, guys. Am I not explaining this well? Because this is so simple. If somebody claims they don't collect stamps and you want to debunk that, you just show they're collecting stamps on the sly. You know, oh, look at you. I saw you buying stamps at the post office on Monday at 3 o'clock and you put them in a scrapbook. You're collecting stamps. I debunked you. Right? No, I like non-stamp collectors' videos. Some of them Smitty. Yeah, no, I have no problem with them. I'm not. Yeah, so.
I have to do with stamp. I would just have to experience stamping, and that debunks it.
Yeah, there you go. See, I mean, you got that right. No.
They don't collect stamps, and you claim that you can debunk that. How can you debunk someone who does not believe something, who does not do something?
Oh no!
You show that they believe it, and you show that they do it. Come on, Matt. This is so damn dumb. It's ridiculous.
I'm not debunking that.
Now, you know, this is why I guess somebody sent me this video to review, because I was like, holy crap. Now, Connor doesn't do much better, let me tell you, but this was bad.
They do not collect stamps. I could just debunk that stamp collecting does not exist, right? But I can't debunk that they do not stamp collect.
Sure you can. You just show they collect stamps.
That's not what I said.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, clarify for me.
This is about whether or not they believe. This is about what their hobby is. I'm not talking about a belief in this sense. So when you say atheism is no more than a religion, when we define religions have tenets and instructions and guides and a worldview and leaders and organization. None of that exists within atheism.
Oh, it doesn't, Matt? The ACA has bylines and guidelines and activists and lay clergy and members of various shows that don't get paid for their work. They do it for free. They spend God knows how many hours, exorbitant amount of hours dedicated to earning money for a nonprofit organization they don't see a dime of. Sounds like a lot of religiosity to me, man. I don't see much of a difference. I mean, the whole ACA is one political organization. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little disingenuous. Now, I'm not saying atheism is a religion. I have videos on my own channel showing atheism is not a religion, and I stand by that. It's not a religion. However, that doesn't mean there's not people in atheism that don't suffer from religiosity. It doesn't mean that there's not certain atheist organizations that are ran no differently than a nonprofit church. They're very similar. I don't see much different. I mean, if there are some, please let me know. But ACA has rules. They have bylines. They have, they have board of directors. They have political aspirations. They, I mean, come on.
Atheism, right?
I see. I mean, you guys do have leaders.
And not all religions have supernatural claims. There are atheist religions out there. I mean, Satanism is an atheist religion. They don't have supernatural claims. At least as far as the Satanic Temple, the Church of Satan, questionable. Because they do believe in chaos magic or sex magic, but they don't think it's like some supernatural thing. But I don't know. I'm not going to get into that another time.
You guys do have beliefs, and you guys are making assumptions.
No, we don't.
You don't have beliefs, Matt? And Matt is one of those people that say, look, don't say we don't have beliefs. Of course you have beliefs. Come on, Matt.
No, we
You guys, you wouldn't.
There's no leader of atheism.
You wouldn't call yourself a leader.
Not like a pope or a priest or.
Well, there's not a single, leader, but that doesn't mean there's not individuals. I mean, there's regional directors of the American Atheists. I mean, Aaron Ra was a regional director, so they do have leaders. I mean, if you're a regional director of a group called American Atheist, you are a leader. A regional director leads. You lead the people underneath you in that region. I mean, that's leadership. Most of us have had positions of leadership at some time, whether it be in the military, whether it be in our jobs. I mean, I've had, brigades of people. I mean, 30 people here. I mean, I had to train 200 people one time over a period of time for new hires that didn't know how to do anything. I literally had to do seminars for like 30 people at a time for 200 people, and then go and show each every one of them how to schedule them to train and get them trained on all kinds of different things. If that's not a leadership position, I don't know what the hell would be. So.
I mean, you seem like a leader to me,
I'm
man.
a leader of atheism.
Okay.
But he's a leader of the the atheist community of Austin, which is an atheist group. I think it's just like a difference without a distinction here. Now I get what he's trying to say. Atheism itself has no leader that makes all the rules. But at the same time, ACA puts out things by fiat. Is it the case? That is normative. American atheists do the same thing. American atheists say this is this. If that's not, trying to be a leader in a group, what the hell is it then? I don't understand how Matt can sit there with a straight face and say, "Look, I'm not a leader in atheism." You kind of are. I mean, good, bad, or indifferent. I think it's kind of a difference without a distinction, and it's kind of hair splitting. But
yeah, sorry, man. I didn't mean to I didn't mean to offend you, man. Like.
So when you say that atheism is a religion, what do you mean?
Okay, yeah, and again, I might have a different definition of a religion. I'd simply see religion as a set of thoughts and beliefs about divinity, right?
Not necessarily about divinity, but yeah, I mean, religion generally is a set of tenets, or more of it's an action, right? Religion tends a lot more to actions rather than just mere beliefs. When we're talking about religiosity, people that go to church, people that have formal venerable worship, people that do rituals, whether they're a divine nature or not. Satanists do rituals, even though they're not of a divine nature. They're not believing something supernatural. Tim Abbott says, Steve, it's not really dumb. You're missing what he's saying. The Bible claims God exists, so that must mean that God exists. Well, the Bible's wrong. Actually, I think people's interpretation of the Bible's wrong on that. Right, simple as that. Romans 1:18-19. Yeah, it's clearly not the case. People can argue that all they want, whatever. But as soon as you start telling other people what they believe and what they know, there's a problem. And by the way, Matt does that quite frequently. American Atheist does that, and the ACA does that. They seem to tell people what they believe and what they, all kinds of things. But yeah, so I do understand what they're saying, I assure you. Yeah, again, it's a difference without a distinction. I'm not saying there's a leader in atheism, but he's an atheist leader, right? I mean, it is semantic.
The lack thereof, or that there is.
But atheism, as you've defined it, is someone who doesn't believe in a God.
Right.
That's not what he said. He said he doesn't believe in a God because he believes it's an assumption. If you go back and review what he said an atheist is somebody who doesn't believe in God because they believe or assume no gods exist, right? Which, by the way, isn't epistemic entailment. If you believe there are no gods, it epistemically entails, rationally speaking, that you don't believe God exists. So.
Set of thoughts and beliefs about divinity, that's someone who is not convinced.
Right, but that is a thought about divinity. You could not have atheism without the concept of God.
Oh my God, then everything is a fucking religion.
Well,
a useless definition.
Not necessarily. Again, we're talking about concepts of actions. There are atheist religions out there, and I know Matt knows this. Intellectual iClasm says, it's hard to claim you're not a leader after pulling a coup against the desires of a democratic body, especially when it's over your belief and those of the deposed leader. Yeah, well, welcome to the ACA. They have so many political coups in the atheist community of Austin. It's bad. It is bad. Let me just tell you. I have talked to people. I know. I've talked to the people that know the board or on the board, or you remember back when they had the whole rationality rules thing. And look, there's a lot of political schisms that are going on. You see a lot of the changeovers of these hosts on the shows now. The old show people are had enough. A lot of them have left. Matt might even leave one of these times. I think they're begging him to stay. So Yeah, it's political. It is not a religion, but that doesn't mean they don't have religiosity. It doesn't mean they don't have a religious mindset or cult mindset, because you go against the ACA, you're a heretic. You're a heretic. It doesn't matter who you are. They will eat their own if you dare disagree with them.
Well, no, I mean, if you're studying trees, right, that you wouldn't call that necessarily divinity.
Hang on.
Yeah, Brainbug, I noticed that, I didn't watch it, but he says Brainbug hosted his ACA show last week, and congrats on that, by the way. I think you were on Truth Wanted, if I'm not mistaken, and people will go check it out, that I did a review of Arden of Eden and Puck, and I thought it was very fair, by the way, and neither one of them have said anything negative. There was one, people have been sending me stuff, but one of the people in the Truth Wanted group, which I'm actually in, kind of shat on my review, but the thing was, they didn't say what if my review was incorrect, which is, again, if you want to crap on me, that's fine, but why not you tell me what I said that was incorrect? Because Puck and Arden Eden didn't seem to see any issue with what I said, and I was very fair to both of them. I told them I wasn't there to crap on them. I wasn't there to shit on them. I wanted to, explain to them certain things that the caller was talking about. That's all. Tim says, of course it's wrong, just like you could be wrong if you see someone stamps as being a stamp collector. If they buy a stamp and they put in a book of stamps, right, you can generally assume that that's stamp collecting. Could you be wrong on your belief? Sure, but would you be justified to believe it? Yes. Again, beliefs can be wrong. Don't be fearful of having false beliefs. It can happen. Big freaking deal. Right? But if I see somebody who says, I don't collect stamps, go out and buy a book of various stamps and go back home and stick it in a collection of a scrapbook of stamps with a little magnifying glass, and then they say, no, I wasn't collecting stamps. I'm going to say, no, I think you're full of crap. I believe that you're collecting stamps. Right? And I'd be perfectly justified. Could there be a reasonable explanation? Possibly. Oh, I was sticking in a friend's scrapbook or something, whatever. But who cares, right? I mean, Brainbug says, Puck Ticker critiques his fair evaluation is worse. Thank you, Brainbug. I appreciate that. And again, objectively, Dan does that show for Truth Wanted. I don't know if he's kicked off yet, but I'm not saying he is or isn't. But, he wanted me to call him one time, and I was like, yeah, maybe. But here's the thing. I don't really see the need to call in one of the ACA shows, because they're not going to understand my arguments very well. And I don't mean that to be demeaning, but many of my arguments are just not something that you can just grasp by a 5-minute dialogue, right? I mean, the atheist semantic collapse argument is a very nuanced argument. It involves some logic. It involves understanding of the square of opposition. I have formalized it, yes, and I have, written a paper on it that I would like to have published. Yeah, that's true. And somebody last time said, Steve spent 75 minutes talking about his paper, and I'm like, no, I didn't. That's, again, 2 minutes. But my whole point is that I don't know why I'd call them, but I would be happy to talk to Dan. He seems reasonable, and I'm happy to talk to Puck, too. He seems reasonable. I guess I would talk to Arden and Eden too. I mean, none of them seem to be, like bad people. Matt, I think is gone off the deep end, but I don't hold that against them.
It also says in your call screen thing that you're saying it's a religion based on blind assumptions.
Right.
But if atheism, as you define it, is not believing in God, what's the blind assumption?
The blind assumption that you're making is that we are living in a material, objective reality.
Okay, well, hang on. Helios says you can be a community leader without having an official leadership position or leadership structure. Why do people deny this when this phenomenon is known in every neighborhood? Yeah. No, I agree with that. Sure. Yeah, totally 100% Helios. And effectively, he's a community leader of atheism. Not trying to say that atheism has a structure like the Catholic Church. I understand the distinction, right? Matt's trying to say, look, atheism doesn't have a structure like the Catholic Church does. Oh, yes. Okay, great. We all recognize that. That doesn't mean you're not a community leader that is promoting atheism. And by the way, the ACA doesn't promote atheism. The ACA promotes agnosticism. I stand by this now. I'm just not going to retract that. They're more interested in people not believing than having a belief God does not exist. So,
that there is something outside of direct experience. So, for example, when you close your eyes, I still exist, right? When you close your eyes, your environment still exists, right? That is a huge assumption that you're making, okay?
All right, so there's two things here. Yes, there's something called ontological persistence, which means that when you close your eyes, you assume the universe still exists. There's still a material world, right? That's objective. It's called persistence. But atheism does not entail materialism. This is a mistake that Connor's making, right? Materialism does entail atheism. And this only works when atheism is a proposition on God's position of existence, right? This is where there's a huge disconnect between some of these terms and Matt's usages. If materialism is true, God does not exist because God is considered to be supernatural under normative usage of supernatural, right? I mean, most people would say, yeah, when we're talking about God, we're talking about supernatural. The people get into the petty idiosyncrasies of these types of word terms, and I think it's foolish, but whatever. We understand, for the most part, that if we're talking about a God, it's going to fall into the supernatural category. And so if you are a materialist, you deny any kind of supernaturalism. Everything is a material foundation from it. But if you're an atheist, that doesn't necessarily mean that you deny all supernaturalism. You can say there's no gods, but there are things like psychic abilities. There's telekinesis. There's pyrokinesis. There's, whatever. There's ghost. I mean, there's a lot of things that would be supernatural, like we consider to be something that's non-natural, without having to say, look, I don't believe in there are no gods, but I still believe in leprechauns, right? So just because you're an atheist does not mean that you are a materialist. I think Connor makes a mistake there.
That assumption, that I am experiencing a reality, isn't a part of atheism. Everybody makes that assumption.
Yeah, that's true. Matt absolutely is correct on that. And by the way, on Twitter the other day, I was having a problem with a couple people who claim to be scientists that were arguing that science doesn't make assumptions, doesn't make presuppositions. I was like, are you crazy? Of course it does. Matter of fact, go watch Thunderfoot's video when he's talking to Eric Hovind. Which, by the way, one time I had the highest likes on that video because I said, Eric Hovind's so wrong that even atheists thinks he needs Jesus. And that was a popular comment back in the day. But even in that video, Thunderfoot, who is a true scientist, acknowledges there are certain assumptions science makes. One, the universe exists; it's observable. We can draw inference from it. That predictive modeling that has accurate predictions has more utility than non-predictive modeling. Things all the time. We have all kinds of things we assume, and that's fine in science. We have to make certain assumptions, and Matt's absolutely right. We assume the universe still exists when we close our eyes. There's a persistence there. Yeah, of course.
Not the assumption that you're experiencing reality. You're experiencing reality, that's the truth. You're making the assumption that we're living in an objective physical world.
By the way, everybody, Cheshire lives in Canada. Just to let you guys know. So I'm a doxer because she lives in Canada. Sorry, I love you, Chesh. But people need to know you're Canadian. I think they have a right to know. I do. I just do.
Right? That's made of matter.
And she says garage funny. Ask her.
At its base. Okay?
No.
You're not making that assumption.
I have evidence that we exist in a material world.
I have evidence that we do not.
Okay, now, and this is something that's completely up for discourse. Right? What is the evidence we live in a material world versus maybe a non-material world, or a physicalism, or non-source physicalism, or something what's called source physicalism, where you have a physical substrate first, and you have mental that comes out of that. Because the concepts of mental and physical, still, we have no idea. I mean, why we have mental constructs over some kind of physical, who knows? Is it eliminanism? Is it non-reductive physicalism? Is it source physicalism? Is it dualism? There's so many different things out there. I have no idea. But if they want to argue, here's the evidence that it's material. Here's the evidence not material. There's an argument you have there. I mean, we have mental constructs. Now, I tend to what's called property dualism, which basically things are physical, but you have a mental properties that are above that. And so all the mental properties are, maybe supervened by physical properties, but they are different properties in themselves. Mental properties, can somehow, in some ways, be reduced to physical properties. But like an idealist would say, it's all mental, right? We are in the what is it called? What is it called when you're in the mind of God? What is it called? There's a certain term when the people believe that we're living in the mind of God, and I forget the term. It's a type of special kind of idealism. But in that case, it would be the mind comes first and then the physical, rather than the physical then the mind. I think the physical comes first and then the mind, that I tend to. However, Connor here would probably, as a theist, think that the mind comes first and then the physical, because the mind would be the mind of God, right?
Well, then mentioned. Because, so what is the blind assumption that atheism is based on?
The materialist paradigm.
No, it's not. Atheism is not based on materialist paradigm. Atheism is based upon the belief that God does not exist, really. It's, again, if this is so simple, if people just did not overcomplicate it. There's one proposition, and that one proposition has a negation. God exists, God does not exist. That's the proposition of the negation. If you believe it's true, you're a theist. You believe it's false, you're an atheist. And anybody who thinks otherwise is just weird, because if not, you can say, well, I only hold atheism as lack of belief. Okay, great. But what do you call people that believe there's no gods? Well, they're atheist, right? Because they lack a belief, according to your own definition. So it's still a case where you say there are no gods. That falls under atheism no matter what, does it not? I don't know what else it would fall under, right? So atheism is based upon the ontological position of God in some capacity. It has nothing to do with materialism or not. Unfortunately, though, because materialism is a argument that there is no supernatural, then atheism would have to fall under materialism. Yeah, I guess he's a fitness guy, TVX. Is that what he is? Because again, I didn't look too much into it. I looked at his page a little bit. Is he a MMA fighter? Is he a nutritionist? I mean, is he a fitness guy? I mean, he's got 2.5 million subs, and that's not the reason why I did this. He's never going to watch this. People that on his stuff have nothing to do with mine. Somebody had watched this video and asked me to review it. That's why I'm doing it. By the way, thank you for everything that you've been guys sending me. Keep sending me stuff you want me to review. But I have no idea who he is, man. So.
Hang on. Let's try this one more time. You say a God exists. I say I'm not convinced.
Okay, BFD, Matt. Like, seriously, dude. Who the hell cares that you're not convinced that God exists? You think the world revolves around you and what you don't believe? Why would a theist, Connor or otherwise, give a shit that you don't believe something? Right now, if you said, hey, Connor, it's not this I don't believe you, you're wrong. Now you got something to talk about. Let me show you why you're wrong. Let me give you all the arguments for atheism. Let me tell you why the logical problem of evil is a very strong argument against this type of God. Why evidential argument for evil is an argument against all gods. Let me tell you why I believe there's no gods, because, evil exists, and if there's a benevolent God, he's either evil or he doesn't exist, because, if you have the power to do something to change things, why doesn't he? These are very good atheist arguments, right? People don't go around arguing for lack of belief. I don't know what the hell a lack of belief argument even is. Maybe they exist. I don't know. I've never seen one, but I read Mackey and Oppie and, those kinds of people. So if there's an argument, say now maybe there might be some arguments for agnosticism. Okay, fair enough. I get that, right? But I'm talking about, I don't see atheists that are self-proclaimed atheists going around saying, oh, I have an argument for why that you just shouldn't believe, except for a handful, but they based upon very silly reasons, right? Oh, you shouldn't believe because there's no evidence. Now you're just making a fiat statement. Now you're making a claim that there's no evidence, which is a positive assertion. By the way, all claims are positive assertions. Don't think otherwise. Everything is a positive assertion if you make something that has assertive force. If you're saying the state of affairs are the case, you're making a claim. Period. There's no such thing as a negative claim. It just doesn't exist. They're all positive. So if I'm saying there is no evidence, that is a claim. Period. You're saying this is the case. This is the reality. This is how the state of affairs are, that there is no evidence. So when I hear atheists say, I'm an atheist because I see no evidence, you are making a claim that there's no evidence. And they don't understand that. Nathan says, are you generally attempting to help people understand Dillahunty's position, or do you have an axe to grind here? There's no axe. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this a very long time. I have people can go read my blog if they want to understand his position. I think the Atheist Experience has been on for 12 years. I think people by now know his position, do they not? I'm not misrepresenting it, am I? Right? This has nothing to do with pissing match. I mean, again, these are about the facts. If I'm saying something incorrect, just let me know. What have I said that is incorrect? What have I said so far that you disagree with? And if people don't know his position, maybe they go watch the show, because again, he's been a lot longer than I have. So, I mean, what is it about his position that I'm misrepresenting? Yeah, and I'm not here to educate people on his position. I'm sorry, that's just not what I do. I'm here to inform people how I understand these concepts by my own personal understanding, right? That's it.
We've defined atheism as someone who is not convinced that God exists.
Oh, it's been 2 decades. Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe it goes back to 2 more decades. Yeah, I think I underestimated that. I think you're right.
Okay.
There's no blind assumption required to not be convinced.
No, that is the falsehood.
All right, so this is where they start going, he kind of goes a little off the rails here. I do agree, you start off, you're not convinced because babies are born innocent, right? They don't even know about the proposition. Now, I think it is foolish when people say babies are born atheists until they start learning about religion. That's just stupid. That's just dumb. Even Richard Dawkins, who is a new atheist, not a new atheist TM, but a new atheist, he even says, look, if you start labeling your kid atheist, you're doing the same thing that a Christian would doing. You're assigning them a label. You're already telling them what they should believe. You're already a form of indoctrination. I think he has a point there, but babies cannot be atheists. That's just stupid. Babies are called innocent towards proposition, meaning they do not know about the proposition. They are unaware of proposition. So there's nothing there for them to even evaluate, right?
You are.
No, that's bullshit.
No.
You start off not convinced because at the beginning of your life, you cannot even process a concept, which means you cannot have a concept.
Right. And Matt's correct. So why assign them the label of atheism? You're telling them what label they're taking. Babies are atheists. You've now done exactly the same theists are saying by God exists by Romans 1:18-19. Right? What's the difference? It's hypocrisy. Now, Connor's, way off in left field too here. I mean, Connor starts going into, and I'll give you a little too long didn't read here. He starts arguing that God's experiential. And so all people know God because we experience God, even as birth. Yeah. Bullshit. Whatever.
No, this is the thing. Concepts are what are actually holding you back from realizing the divinity of experience itself, the divinity of the present moment.
Answer the question. Don't go off on it. Can a baby that's just been born conceive of a God?
No, this is why they're not atheists as well, Matt. Take your own advice. You see how Matt can be right but wrong at the same time, right? I mean, correct. A baby can't. So why assign them a label, right? At best, you can say they just are unaware of the proposition, therefore they're innocent towards P. You could argue innocent is giving them a label, but people go around saying I'm innocent of the proposition because they obviously know the proposition. They don't even know how would they even know what they're innocent toward? So I mean, I give a little leeway there. It's semantics, but yeah, to say that a baby is an atheist merely because they haven't conceived of a God is very exactly the same with theists going, well, God exists in all of us, so we all know God exists. We're all born with God in our heart, even babies. You're doing the same thing. Stop it.
Yes. The problem is you have the wrong idea of what God is.
You have the wrong idea what God is. And again, this is where it kind of goes off the rails. And I don't know if he's being a Poe or not. I know nothing about this guy. TVX in the live chat seems to know something about him. So I'm assuming that he is a theist, but I don't know if this is complete Poeism or not. And that's the problem with being a Poe. You never know. But he is arguing God is experiential, not a concept, not an object, which makes no sense. The whole thing about the existence of God is that there's a being that exists that has intentional states, and there's a concept that we have of what that being is. There's a concept that relates to that object, right? There's a reference to a referent, right? So we have a concept, a mental construct, and that construct, we think, points to what we call God, right? And we do it all the time. We do it with all objects. I mean, with my cup, my magical cup here, right? I have a mental construct of what is a cup here. Is there actually a cup here? We assume so, right? I mean, I don't assume this is illusionary. I assume there's a physical thing here. Do I think we perceive it directly and correctly? No. I think we process it through filters. In fact, like I said, you can see there's a magical cup here. But I mean, if you really wanted to, get into the details of philosophy, that maybe this cup doesn't exist. Maybe it's just an arrangement of primitives called mereological nihilism. There's like a dot matrix. Does a picture exist on a dot matrix because it has a bunch of dots on it? You say, yeah, it's got a bunch of dots, but it forms what we illusionary think is a picture. My mind sees a picture there, but is there actually a picture there? Does that picture have ontology? Well, just take it into 3 dimensions, right? Just because of arrangement of atoms, does that make the cup exist? I think for practical purposes, yeah, we say that a cup exists because we're talking about practicalities. Just like, a picture exists. It's because it's a mental construct. So a lot of that, we use that to argue idealism. I don't think it actually does, obviously. I am a realist. But you can see why people do tend to idealism sometimes, because they think everything's a mental construct because, if there's something that exists, it's just going to be rearrangements of primitives.
This from
Okay, then give me your definition of God.
I don't have a definition of God.
Oh, okay. This is where I really lost my mind. How could you not have a working definition of God if you're in an organization that just goes around saying, we don't believe God exists? Then what the hell are you talking about? What is it you don't believe that exists? This is straight up dishonesty. Straight up freaking dishonesty. You cannot say that you do not believe something, like, I don't believe cups exist. And I say, well, what the hell's a cup? Well, I have to understand what a cup is to say I don't believe it. If somebody says, well, if I say I don't, believe Gerbilgoffs exist. Well, I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. I don't know what a Gerbilgoff is, right? I don't know what you mean by that. Right now, one could argue I don't believe that I don't have the belief that they exist because I don't know what they are, and it kind of goes into more of an agnostic type thing. I get that, right? If you don't believe something. If you say you don't believe something, you might actually believe it because, if like let's say, how do you say cup in Spanish? Cuppa? I forget. How do you say cup in Spanish? Anybody know? But if some foreign language, you go, like pantalones is pants. I'm wearing pants, right? So if I didn't know Spanish word for pants was pantalones, and I say, I have no idea pantalones exist, I might actually do believe pantaloons exist. It's just a semantic differentiation there. It's just a different label, but I do believe pants exist. But here's the thing where he's a member of an atheist community, a community that says, look, we don't accept that a God exists. And then he goes around saying, I don't have any idea what a God is. I don't have a definition of God. Then what the hell is it you don't believe in? I mean, that just boggles my mind that he has the audacity. El Capo. Yeah, I'm just going to call it El Capo. Yeah, Basso's glass. I know Basso's glass. I just don't remember what cup is.
React to everyone else's definitions of
exactly.
God. They define God, and I am either convinced that God exists, or I am not convinced that God exists.
If you listen...
It would be stupid and dishonest argument for me to set up a God and knock it down. That's a straw man.
Well, no, not necessarily, okay? Okay, so I don't know why some people have such strong misunderstandings of the straw man. Okay? Basso. Yeah, Basso. V's are pronounced like B in Spanish. A straw man is where you take somebody's argument and you change it in a way that's easier to knock down, right? That you make an effigy out of it, right? It's out of straw rather than, something that's a lot more solidified, something other than, it's the opposite of steel manning, right? So when you're saying that there are no gods, who gives a shit what anybody else's argument is? Right? Now, I'm not saying Matt is doing this, but Matt does believe there's no gods, right? If you go back to his early atheist experience, he says, gods don't exist. He's a straight up, which some people would call strong atheist, which is just atheism, but he believes there are no gods, right? Straight up. So he's not, even though he promotes atheism as a lack of belief, he himself is more than just a lack of belief atheist. He believes there are no gods. He has a positive epistemic status. And then he goes around saying, well, atheism isn't, the belief that God doesn't exist, but he does have the belief that God doesn't exist, but he doesn't defend that on the atheist experience because that would be too complicated to do for the show. But for him to say, look, there are no gods, he doesn't have, it's not based upon anybody else's arguments. It doesn't have to be a theist argument. He can make his own arguments. I don't believe that any being out there that's external to the body, that has no physical substrate, that has intentional states. That could be his argument if he wants to. He doesn't have to have a single other person. So it has nothing to do with a straw man argument. Absolutely nothing.
Okay, then
everybody find out what cup is in Spanish? Because I'm still... Cuppa. Is it cuppa? I think it's cuppa, isn't it? That's Italian or something.
Then why don't you listen to my definition of God and see if you can debunk it?
How do you debunk a definition? I can say God is my cat. That's whatever. I don't own a cat, but if I did own a cat, cats are always going to be, God and goddesses anyways. If you ever owned a cat, you'd know this. They are divine. They take over everything. They think they're at least gods or goddesses. But how do you debunk a definition? I don't even know what the hell that would even mean to debunk a definition, right? Because again, these are stipulative things. And there's nothing wrong with giving in stipulative usages.
Happy to listen to your definition of God. What we're talking about.
Cup is taza, somebody said. I don't recognize that word. I took 3.5 years of Spanish and I don't recognize that word. By the way, let me tell you guys my definition of God. And again, this is only for just cursory purposes.
was whether or not a baby that's just been born can conceive of a God.
Within my...
We know from neuroscience is that that's not possible, and you're saying it is.
No, that's not what he's saying. He's not saying that he conceives of a God. That's not, again, this is straw manning Connor's argument. Connor's not saying babies can conceive of God. He's arguing babies experience God, which is like saying, well, you know, babies may not be able to conceptualize happiness, but they can experience it, right? Well, yeah, sure, right? Babies can experience, you know, happiness. They can experience emotions. There's a disconnect between what Connor's arguing and what Matt's talking about, you know, because Connor's trying to say babies experience God. He's not saying that babies can understand or have the concept. So my usage of God, and again, Segmentation Fault has this pinned on his Twitter. Thank you. But this is stipulative. This, you know, you can use it, you can manipulate it and whatever. But just for sakes of discussion and arguendo, I say God, a necessary being or agent with intentionality that all contingents are dependent upon and or can prescriptively change or suspend natural law by having complete dominion over an aspect of nature. That includes like the Norse gods and the Greek gods and things of that nature. But I think that God, if he exists, has to be a necessary being. Could somebody argue a contingent God? Sure, but I don't care about that point. If they can natural, you know, that's because basically they're arguing a natural God. Whatever. I think for the reasons why we have discussions, we're talking about a being that must exist, a metaphysical necessity that explains things, because that's the whole point of why theists will argue that God explains things. It's something that has intentional states. It has a mind of some kind, right? That's fine. I mean, why can't we use that definition? You don't have to. But I have when somebody says, well, what do you mean by God? I give them this. And a lot of them are like, yeah, okay, I guess that works. I'm like, come on. I mean, we've been having these discussions for how long? How silly it is to say, well, what do you mean by God? People have been talking about God for 2,000 years. If you go read, you know, some materials on God. Go read Stanford's, you know, has a whole bunch of things on God. Swinburne or Plantinga or Mackey or whoever. I mean, all of them talk about God in some capacity, and they're all very similar. So, you know, formulate your own thing, but don't just sit there and say, what do you mean by God? That doesn't help the discussion.
See what you're doing? In my definition of a God, a baby can. You are creating a definition of a God because you are saying that the baby cannot experience this God. Therefore,
he's not creating a definition. He's just giving us a parameter. If God exists, then it would be something that a baby cannot conceptualize based on neurology. I don't disagree with Matt on that. It's not giving a definition, though. So.
Have a definition of God.
Oh, and by the way, go read. I forgot to put in the live the video description, but go read my last blog on by definition. And I didn't call it atheism by definition for a reason. You know, it would have been more salacious, I guess. But it explains, I think, pretty effectively the misunderstandings a lot of atheists have of what it means by a definition, whether it be a general descriptive definition or a prescriptive.
No. So you can sit here and define a God all day long and say that your definition of a God means that babies can conceive of things, and what it proves is that your definition of God is wrong and not attached to reality. Because
how does a definition be wrong? You can say, look, I don't think your definition is good. I think it's a poor definition. I'm not going to accept your definition from my usages. If you want to argue your definition and see where it leads you, that's perfectly fine. Right? I mean, but a definition cannot be wrong or right. I don't know what that even means. One sec. I'm putting in the video description my blog here. I also have a PDF, which is easier to read because it does involve math. So that'll update there. But yeah, go check out my blog on definitions. I highly recommend it, not just because it's my blog, but I think it really does explain, very basic. And I touch on a lot of subjects, and I put them all together as compactified as possible to why there's a misunderstanding between a general dictionary and something like a mathematical prescriptive definitions.
babies can't conceive of God.
You're trapping yourself in a giant contradiction. You don't even know what my definition of God is, yet you're denying it. Before I even tell you what
he
my
hasn't
definition
told him what
of
his
God
definition is. Yeah, that's true.
The definition of God is based on babies can understand it, and we have evidence that says that babies can't understand it, then your definition of God is automatically flawed.
Do you not see that?
The definition of God was, my God.
Neither one of them are talking about any definitions of God, right? All Connor's doing is saying that, oh, God's an experience. Okay, fine. If God's an experience, what's that experience like? I've never felt it. But I mean, he's saying that babies feel it. How do you know babies feel it? I mean, that is an assumption. He's making a by fiat statement there. right? We all agree, I think babies can experience emotions, and he's trying to relate God to an emotional experience, right? And he's saying, well, God's going to experience, babies can experience emotions. It's not that they conceptualize about God. They don't even have to conceptualize what their emotion is, but they can experience it. That's a bullshit argument, Connor. And I think Connor knows it. This is why I'm wondering if he's a Poe on this or not. But
because my God exists means that Matt has a vagina. I don't need to know anything more about your God. It's false because I don't.
No, evidence, please. No, I don't want evidence of that. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't want evidence of that.
If your God is one that what you think that babies can understand God, we know that's not true either.
By you
so
saying...
I don't hear all of your definition of God because you already broke it.
No. By you saying that babies cannot understand God, you are creating a definition of God.
He's not creating a definition of God. He's creating a property that if God exists, it would have or not have. That's all. It's not a definition. I mean, sure, he can say it's a description, but that's not really describing anything, right? If I say, hey, babies can experience, that's not a description of anything. So he's not creating a definition. A definition is what I gave you earlier, right? A metaphysical being with intentionality, blah, blah, blah. That's a descriptive definition, right? And it's not even describing something that I accept is a real thing. It's just saying, look, if we're going to use this word, that's how I'm going to be using it in my discussions. If you want to use some other usage of that word, that's fine too. I have no problem with that. But if I'm discussing God with you, that's generally what I mean by the word God, because people all the time ask, what do you mean by God? Well, there you go. I mean, matter of fact, if you want, I put in the video description and you guys can use it at your leisure. And like I said, it's small enough to fit in a tweet. It could be modified later on. I didn't make it very complicated, but my usage of the term God is that, and you can... If somebody ever says, what do you mean by God? Well, there you go. It saves a lot of time, because I think they're just obfuscating when they ask that question. And yes, I'm trying to push through this because we, trying to get in, because Jessica's got her premiere in 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes.
No, I'm not. I'm saying babies can't understand concepts.
Because God is beyond concept.
God,
What does that even mean?
They don't understand arguments. They don't understand genitalia. They don't understand what food is.
This is the issue. This is the issue.
The way brains work.
You think that God is a concept when it is.
There is a concept of God. This is the thing. Even if there's a physical being called God, we have a concept of that. Now, does it mean that we have an attachment between the two? No, because I don't think anybody's ever fully experienced what if God existed, where they could have the same concepts. This is why we have thousands of different denominations, like 45,000 different denominations or whatever it is. And everybody has their own idea about God, because there's nothing objective that we can go look at right now to say, here's what I mean by God. Like, at least with my cup, right? Even though you guys can't see my cup, if you guys all wanted to, right? I mean, it's theoretically possible that all you guys can come and observe this cup. You can actually feel it. You can measure it. You can see how much, coffee it holds. Not enough. And it's empty right now, by the way. You can see that you, believe me or not, it is green. Go figure, right? Green. Some actually have seen the actual color, but it's kind of like a lime green. But it's something objective. And so when people say, look, Steve has a cup and it has this much of coffee it can hold, it has this color to it, it has this dimensions to it, the outer and the inner diameters, you can take a micrometers to them and measure it and figure all that out. We can't do that with a God. And that I do agree with. I don't think God is something that is something that is objective as far as we can all experience the same way, because that if we did, then there wouldn't be so many different denominations out there and so many different views of what God is, right? So this is just Connor and Matt just both kind of going back on just crap. I mean, there's nothing productive in this conversation because both of them are using rhetoric, in my opinion, negative rhetoric. Nothing wrong with good rhetoric, but
is not. God is an experience. God is a direct experience.
Connor, listen.
Yes?
Babies don't understand the concept of a horse. The
Correct.
concept of a horse is independent of whether a horse exists or not.
Right, absolutely.
Babies cannot conceive of a God. I did not say that proves that God doesn't exist. I didn't say it had anything to do with whether or not God exists. Babies don't have the ability to process concepts.
But I thoroughly agree with Matt. That's why people need to stop calling them atheist, because atheism is a position. And for them, you cannot assign your usages to a baby and say, look, this baby is an atheist. How the hell you know if a baby accepts your weak definitions, right? I mean, that.
Understand that.
We should take
But
his
what
own
I'm
his
telling
own
you
argument.
is that God is not a concept.
Understand? No. You just
God is not a concept, but a concept relates to an object. There's a reference and there's a referent, right? If anybody who does any programming understands object-oriented programming, that understands forming a dimension and how you define things and how you can point to something, right? And even like memory locations, you point to a certain memory location. You have a reference to that memory location. You have a reference to a string. So if there's an object, our mind formulates a concept that relates to an object. And the brain does this subconsciously most of the time, so we don't have to, every time we look at something, reform our beliefs again. Right? Every time I look at my cup, my brain doesn't sit there and go, what is this object? Let me ponder this. No, it automatically has been informed what a cup is, and it does all those steps automatically. Right? It automatically knows this is a cup, this is what it does, it's supposed to have things you can drink out of it, right? If every time I observe something, my brain had to go through all the same processing it did as a baby, that I had to go, what is this? We couldn't function. So the brain does all that stuff automatically. And again, I know shit all about psychology, people. Neurology, psychology, all that crap. And I don't mean it crap because it's not. It's actually a very, very highly sophisticated fields. I just know nothing about it. So I don't mean crap pejoratively. I didn't mean it as I am shit at it. I am inept when it comes to psychology. Don't listen to me for fuck all when it comes to psychology. But I at least understand certain things as it overlaps with philosophy, I think. And I think that I am correct in what I just told you. But I will tell you right now, I don't know anything about psychology. I don't even want to understand psychology because it's just way out of my depths. But I don't think they're wrong on that. I mean, that babies do not have the concepts of God. I agree with that.
You just said that babies, you understand that babies can't understand concepts.
Correct.
And a minute ago, you said that.
Oh, and by the way, somebody pointed out, Wolfgang, even before we even started, the comments on this video on the ACA side, like one of them was this: "We're all born atheists. It takes misguided parents to indoctrinate children into believing." Oh God, it's so cult-like mentality. It's stupid.
No, I did not. I said they could understand God. God is not a concept.
Baratic Hierarchic says, let's talk psychology. I would be lost. I love telling you guys my limitations. I love telling you what I'm interested in and what I'm not interested in. This is why I don't ever extend my hand. This is when people say, Steve's a charlatan, Steve's a fraud. It's like, what the hell? I never tell you guys that I know something about something that I don't. I mean, if I do, I try to demonstrate it, like math. I mean, I have math videos. I think people understand. I probably have a basic understanding of math, right? At least I hope to. I mean, I have Calc 2 videos. Now, I'm not saying I'm great at math. I'm not. I'm pretty sucky at math. But I have a basic understanding. I never read anything about psychology. I don't have an interest in it. Right? So I would be not the person to talk to. Why am I hearing things? Oh, it's a super chat. It's been so long since I've had one. I didn't recognize the sound. I'm not trying to be funny here. I didn't know what the hell that was. I thought it was somebody subscribing. Helios, $5.75, $5. Thank you, Helios, $5.75. Says, this is like listening to two people argue whether 1 + 1 = 3 or 1. It doesn't matter whose argument is better. They're both being idiots. Well, I'm going to end it right there because I think Helios kind of summed up my summation. Thanks, Helios. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm going to end with this. But I think you're right. But
that is what you must get
through your mind.
This
so we can
God
watch
is
Cheshire's
beyond
video.
concept. Oh.
Because all understanding is conceptual.
But God is beyond understanding.
Well, if God's beyond understanding, then that means that we don't know what they even expect with God.
You are so identified with your atheistic belief. You can.
Babies don't have object permanence, so if they can't see it, they can't touch it, they can't sense it, it doesn't exist.
Why don't you listen to my definition of God?
Romanes says, wouldn't babies be agnostic given the definition of no knowledge for agnostic? Well, no. Agnostic means somebody who has suspended judgment, right? Who tried to evaluate but holds no belief either way. It has nothing to do with knowledge when we're talking about the ontological position of God existing or not. So, yeah, babies would not be agnostic because agnostic requires somebody who has tried to evaluate the proposition of God existing but has come to no conclusion.
You want to start over, Connor? You want to try again?
That'd be great. I'd love to.
Start over again. Please do.
What God do you believe in? Give me a rough ballpark definition.
So, first of all, I want to make it clear that I do not believe in a God. What I'm about to tell you is not some belief system. It's not some philosophy. It's not.
Jackass. Thanks for wasting my time.
Now, I don't really kind of blame him for hanging up per se, but I think he should have at least followed through with this. I mean, this is entertainment, right? The atheist experience is not to educate you. Atheist experience is to be entertained, This would have been good entertainment because it gets to the point of like total dumpster fire. I mean, if this was on Non Sequitur show, I'd been going, what? Because, I mean, it goes into pure sophistry. Because he starts arguing that his definition of God is just basically God's an experience that permeates everything, that's in all things, and we all experience God, therefore God exists. That's stupid. And so I don't know why Matt hung up so prematurely. Premature disconnect is what it was. Premature disconnectulation. I don't know.
Well, before I was rudely cut off, let me finish what I was going to say. I do not believe in God. God is not a belief system. God is not a philosophy. God is not dogma. God is not concept. God is a direct experience.
And there you go. I mean, what the hell does that even mean, though? If God's a direct experience, there has to be something that you're experiencing that relates to something, right? And this goes back to even, again, really technical things of what we mean by experiential. As far as like chemicals, like experience of love, right? It could be completely chemical related, right? I mean, we know what the experiences is, and we know that there's a material underpinning for our experiences of happiness and love and hate. We know that these things are hormonal in nature in some capacity and neurological in nature. But if for us to experience God, wouldn't that mean there's something ontologically that exists as God, or is God just a feeling at that? If he's arguing God is a feeling, well, first of all, that tends to be maybe a naturalistic fallacy of some kind, maybe. But it's just, what does that even mean? God is happiness. Well, that is naturalistic fallacy. But I mean, okay, God is happiness. Therefore, if you experience happiness, you experience God. What the fuck does that even mean? I mean, does that really tell us anything? Where there's a being out there that created the universe, or that has intentional states? No. All right, it's New Age nonsense.
God is right here, right now. This is where atheists fall into the trap. It's one giant contradiction. They are defining God. Now, it's a loose definition, but they are defining God in the sense that they are giving God a characteristic. They are giving God the characteristic that God is a concept.
Well,
but you see, God is not a concept. God is the absence of all characteristics. God is the emptiness.
What does that mean, is absence of all characteristics? And again, if he wants to relate it to a naturalistic thing, like, oxytocin or oxytocin, like love and happiness, and yes, we know those things exist, but we want to know if there's something that exists that created everything, right? We want to know if there's a being out there that has knowledge that we don't have, that is existing outside of a physical understanding and outside of our planet. And that's what look, I think most people would want to know this. Atheists included. I think that just like aliens, if aliens existed on some of the planet with, I'm not saying they're gods, obviously, but I mean, if aliens existed on another planet, wouldn't you guys want to know? I sure the hell would want to know. So if God exists here, I want to know. But to have a direct experience, there's something has to be there for us to have that experience from. Even love, when we experience it, that is from something. There's a reason why we have that experience. It is based upon chemicals, right? Oxytocin.
In which all form.
I'm probably butchering that because I'm not a neurologist, but yeah, Dr. Karasi's creepy as fuck. Yeah, no, I don't know about this guy. I don't know if he's being a Poe or whatever. This is a nonsensical argument, but this is what I don't understand why Matt Dillahunty hung up on him. This is where there's a whole dumpster fire for the show that the ACA is. This is what he's sort of been going, oh, please tell us more about this bullshit.
Years. God is an infinite blank mind with infinite potential.
Okay, then then how is he experiential? You're saying he's a blank mind? What is he, doesn't know anything? But obviously you're saying there's some object that exists. I don't know what he means by blank mind. Is he saying that, God is a tabula rasa? But a blank mind that exists and that being we can experience? I mean, nothing makes sense about this argument, dude. Just nothing.
God is infinity.
God's infinity.
You can't conceptualize infinity. You can try.
These are what I hear from New Ages kind of thing. God's the infinite. Okay. First of all, we can conceptualize about infinity. Can we conceptualize infinity? No, we have finite minds. Of course not. And I'm not even convinced actual infinities do exist. They probably don't. But that doesn't mean that you have some infinite being outside space-time that does exist that we can experience. Because I don't know how we could experience something in time from something outside of time.
Try, but that's not infinity. Because we are imagining infinity with a finite mind. Therefore, it cannot be infinity.
What? Look, we can understand concepts like infinity. Doesn't mean we conceptualize it, but we understand when I do a limit, and I take x to infinity. I know what the hell that means. I know that when we're talking about Cantor's diagonal proof, what it means by having different cardinalities and different types of infinities. Now, that doesn't mean our mind can process. We cannot do a infinite process in a finite amount of time. This is why we have math. Math can do an infinite summation and it's done. That's already a completed process. There's no time involved in a mathematical formula that gives you an infinite summation. Zero. It's already a completed process. We cannot do that in a finite time. We cannot sit there and go, okay, what's the summation of 1 to infinity? Now we understand that's a divergent series, and that would be an infinite, but we don't sit there and go 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 and all the way up to infinity. There's no amount of time possible to even complete that. But I can write it down as a symbol and say summation, x to the infinity, and then 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 and have a series for that. So I don't know what he means by, God is a blank mind that's infinite.
They would simply not listen to this. Because this...
Well, what there's to listen to? It's stupid. But, again, this is entertainment to me. This is what the ACA should be going, yeah, please tell us more about this.
Against their belief so hardcore, it questions their identity. They have built an identity out of atheism. It's no different from religion. It's impossible to convince or have a rational debate with someone like this.
That wasn't a debate, and I don't consider the AC to be rational any longer.
Because they have built their whole life, their financial security, everything around being an atheist.
Well, that's true. No, and he has a point, and I think the ACA and American Atheist, their religiosity exists there. Absolutely, I do think cult-like mentality. Absolutely. Now there are other organizations out there that are not so much, but with them especially, absolutely there is. If anything, I kind of like. I'm not afraid to say it. I actually think the Satanic Temple has some very good points that they make. They're a religion, right? But at least they're upfront about some of the things that they say, right? The ACA, I think, is dishonest.
And so when you give them this new framing of what it could mean for God to exist, the ego immediately lashes out. It immediately denies it. It threatens the ego. It threatens the ego's survival.
Why? I don't know why there'd be a threat there. He's trying to argue again that God is an experience. Okay, great. If it's an experience, let me experience it, and that way I can attach it to somebody. If God says, hey, come have lunch with me, and I'm going to give you this amazing experience, okay. I'm hoping to take a vacation. Actually, I am taking a vacation in July. I got plane tickets already. That's going to be an experience, right? I'm going to experience something that I've never experienced before. I'm going somewhere that I've never been before. And so that's an experience. The place I go is that has to exist for me to have that experience, right? There's an ontological presence there. There's a fact of the matter that exists. For God to exist, for God to be experiential, there still has to be a fact of the matter there, right? Am I just not? I'm trying to give principle of charity to this guy, but am I just not understanding his argument, or is it just so bad that there's no argument to be even had to be understood? That's how I viewed this when I listened to this nonsense. But I don't think Dillahunty did much better, though.
You can see how offended they were. You can see how they felt in danger. Their egos were in danger. I was literally in the process of dissolving their egos. A baby does experience God, because that's what God is experience.
How do you know this? Now you're just making an assertion. Now you're doing the same thing that an atheist does by saying an baby's an atheist. You're just saying atheists experience, or babies experience God. What?
You see? So by them saying that a baby cannot experience God, that is imposing a characteristic upon God.
Well, no, it's both of them have to have some understanding what God is to even make those kind of statements. This is why I'm saying that Matt and Connor are being a little disingenuous here. They both obviously have some conceptualization of what they think a God is. And for Matt to say otherwise is completely dishonest. But for that to exist, now they're saying, well, a baby can experience this. And the atheists are saying, well, a baby can't experience this. That's part of the argument. That's something that they could argue. And do I think there's an objective fact of the matter to be had there? Probably not. I don't know how you would evaluate such a thing. But you want to argue maths. Babies are born and it's like baby genius. They actually do advanced calculus in their heads. They just can't tell anybody about it. Well, that's a non-demonstrable type thing. That's just what's called a bare possibility. Is it possible? Yes. Is it logically possible? Yes. Is it biologically possible? No. We know from neurology it's not possible. But if you want to make those kinds of, blanket type of arguments, and I want to just argue with that with somebody, have at it. Do I think there's anything that's going to come out of it? No. But this is why I don't get involved with a lot of the theist versus atheist arguments as far as God existing and God non-existence, because I don't get much out of them. I think they're just boring. I'd rather talk about the beliefs. That's why I like epistemology more than theology. For that very reason. I like to know why people believe what they believe and how beliefs are formed and knowledge. I don't really care whether somebody believes gods exist or believes they don't. I want to know if they're justified to have those positions. And that's the whole basis of Spawn's street epistemology, right? That's what Anthony Magnabosco and his crew do. They go in and try to undermine theist justifications for the belief. Nothing wrong with that. And I'll be wrapping this up in 4 minutes, so get your questions ready.
So they were saying that they weren't giving God a definition when they were. It was a huge contradiction. They would not listen to my definition of God.
He's just giving a parameters, not giving a definition.
Now, the funny thing is, even if I gave them a definition of God, I would have told them that that is still not God, because God is beyond language. God is beyond words. God can only be experienced directly. But of course, they simply would not have been able to comprehend that, because they are so lost in concepts. This is why they're suffering.
Well, no,
Can't
they're
you
not lost.
Can't you see how offended?
They're not lost in concepts. They're lost in dogmatism. The ACA is a dogmatic organization, full of religiosity, no different than I would say any evangelical. And I don't hell even promoting. I don't know what the ACA promotes. At least Satanic Temple and those guys go, yeah, we promote atheism as in gods are bullshit. The ACA doesn't even do that. They're like, we promote lack of belief. Okay. I know you got Premiere. All right, so you get the gist of this. And this basically is on the same thing and whatever. But anyways, I wanted to do a quick review on this. People are sending me stuff. Send me more stuff. I'm trying to get to what I can. But yeah, this was too. I think Helios wrapped it up perfectly. This was just two idiots having non-dialogue between each other, and it's so disappointing too, because Matt can be really smart when he wants to be on certain things, but he's gotten so egotistical and so dogmatic. And I'm not trying to like sit there and people are going to go, look at this hate boner he has for Matt. I have no hate boner for Matt whatsoever. If Matt ever wanted to say, be an adult and say, hey, look, Steve, I think your argument, he didn't have to be talked to me, I don't care. But he says, hey, Steve, I think your argument is wrong, and let me show you logically and break it down all the logical steps that could be objectively verified, and give me some citations on it as well would be nice. I would love that. Of course, that's not going to happen, because we all know he can't do it. I think my arguments are pretty unassailable, but doesn't mean they can't be assailed. If somebody, matter of fact, if Alex Malpass assailed them, then it'd be just fine. I mean, if anybody could, he would. I mean, he could assail anything. I mean, I'm telling you, if Alex argues that the 2 + 2 = 6, he's probably right. I mean, he's a master logician. But I'm just saying, for somebody like Matt, I don't think he can assail my argument. I don't think he has a skill set to do it. But he hasn't even tried. He just says my arguments are wrong by fiat. And so that's the dishonesty that I see from Matt. But that doesn't mean I have a hate boner for him. If he ever wanted to, I'd be happy to have a discussion with him. I'd be happy to explain to him my arguments. But he's just all rhetoric. There's no discussion to be had when he was just, no, that's not, you're using the wrong definition. You've used the word disbelief wrong. Oh, it's like, shut up at that point. You're not having a dialogue. So anyways, we're going to wrap this up. Cheshire has a premiere. It's a 4-minute long video. I haven't watched it. I don't really even know what's about. I have an idea, but I don't really know because I haven't really talked to her that much recently. She's been busy. I've been busy. So yes, Cheshire has to do all the hard stuff. That's what I keep her around for. I don't like doing hard stuff. I just give all the difficult stuff to her. I put her to work the other day. I actually put her to work and said, no, look, Chesh, you got to do something. You can't just sit there and look pretty. And she spent about 2.5 minutes doing something, and I said, yeah. So she's going to hate me for life for those 2.5 minutes of work. But yeah, anyways, go watch her premiere. I'll put the link in the video description right now, and I'm going to end this. It's called Are We the Baddies? I don't even know what the hell that means. But there you go, Cheshire. Link is in the video description. 82 people should be going over that link as soon as I end this. At least, well, probably about, I'd say, 10 people, because about 72 people are hate views on my channel. But anyways, thanks for watching this, guys. I'll have more reviews coming up. If you've got some stuff you want me to check out, please let me know. Send me the clips via DM. Please like, subscribe, share these videos, become a patron. Be amazing if you guys become patrons. I love my patrons. If you guys want to communicate with me through Patreon, it's the fastest way to communicate with me other than Twitter. A lot of people don't like Twitter. I get it. Facebook's the worst. Or you become a member channel, you get the cool little green name. So I appreciate it, guys, very much. And I will be seeing you on the next review. And good night.